I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Jonny Smith.
And this is On the Other Side of Things, the Smith & Sniff spin-off in which we answer your questions. Hello again. Here we are, answering your questions. And
We're trying.
If you've got a question for us, hello@smithandsniff.com. Start your subject line with Otosot if you have a question. It helps us just to be slightly less shambolic.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd like to dive in. I'm on the edge of the diving board, and I've got my very small swimming trunks on, which my mum has hand sewn on a couple of oval badges.
Yeah,
and I'm ready to go.
You're the Tom Daly of car questions.
Yeah, I met Tom Daly last week. But
did you?
Yeah, but I wasn't wearing those swimming trunks I've just described.
Was he?
No, he wasn't, I don't think.
Okay, you didn't ambush him at a pool?
No, I didn't. I met him at a boutique event to do with a Renault 5. That's what I did. He would almost look like he'd come off the set of Blade.
What?
It was a very long kind of coat, faux leather or something type black coat that was open at the chest, and then the really high-heeled kind of those boots with lots of shiny metal bits on. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you describe those kinds of boots. Like a fashionable biker boot that was high-heeled almost.
I feel like we've got distracted particularly early this week.
Okay, anyway, none of this is connected to a letter from a listener, David Long. Guys.
Hi, David.
Hi, David. Sweet guys. What the F is going on with that one gear selector forced upon every B58/ZF car? Toyota, Morgan, Ineos, and probably others can't seem to use their own individual styling for this one BMW part. Surely it's just electronics and LEDs under that repulsive trapezoid. Would it be so hard to design a plastic shell that suits your model's character and transfer the guts over? This doesn't seem to happen with other borrowed power plants. You don't see, for example, a 90s Toyota shift lever in the Emira or a CLA 45 selector in an Emira. What gives? CMTMB, Dave Long. Dave, this is a great question.
Okay, so when he says B58, he means the BMW straight six engine.
Yes.
/ZF, which is the ZF
8-speed
automatic
paddle.
8-speed.
Yeah.
So it's paired with that.
I guess the most recent flurry of confusion of this is the Morgan Super Spout.
Yes.
Which has that selector. Now, I'm pretty sure when I did the walk round of that car and I was talking to Morgan about it, they said that BMW had stipulated that if they use their drivetrain, so they are the official drivetrain supplier, they cannot change that shifter.
Oh,
and I think BMW went, if you're using our shit, we want you to display our shit.
But that's, I mean, well, what did David call it? A repulsive trapezoid.
Do you know what I couldn't have said it better, because I know it probably is ergonomic. I'm trying to remember what it feels like in the hand, but I don't remember it feeling brilliant. And I don't like the shape of it. My
memory is that it does feel okay in the hand, but it is shaped a little bit. Although
it's asymmetrical,
like perhaps
isn't it?
It's better. Yeah, it's asymmetric. I think it's handed for left-hand drive a little bit, is it not? Because it is asymmetric. Or do they flip it over? Anyway,
it's not great.
I would guess, because one of the interesting things about Morgan using BMW engines, I understand, is that they don't simply, write a nice letter to BMW and BMW go, fine, pay this invoice and some crates will arrive with engines in it. It's a much more integrated relationship. And I seem to remember hearing that Morgan gets to go down to BMW test facilities with their cars, with the engines in, and use the BMW test track in the south of France. Maybe go to Munich as well. So they're getting sort of engineering support on the installation. It's not just simply, here you go, do with it as you see fit. Because I guess from BMW's point of view, they don't want it to be a shonky installation that will make their engine look bad. No. So it's quite a two-way relationship. It's weird they'd insist on it, though, for See, and I always thought, and I'm just guessing here, that the reason that Morgan and indeed Ineos don't change the selector is because it's just too expensive to do that. Because although the selector is just a big switch, basically, it's got a park button at the top, I think, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And does it have other buttons?
It has a trigger on the other side, doesn't it? On the front of it to pull it back in from park to drive, so when it locks out.
Yeah.
See, I did wonder whether you could just go get the leather workers of Morgan to give it an enormous foreskin and just bury it.
This has crossed my mind. It needs a sleeve, because the way that TVR realised that they could just sort of create this kind of leather and chrome condom to slip over the Vauxhall stalks in their cars.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Well.
It was like a very, very baggily worn chenille jumper.
Yes, it was a bit baggy. The trouble is, I suppose, the buttons on the BMW Selector are very precise. They're quite small, very precise.
Yeah.
If you introduced even a TIFF spec Carpaccio of leather sleeve, you're adding extra depth, making it harder to push those buttons, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But I have to say, when I did the walk around of that car, and of course the previous version of that car, the Plus 6, had it, I was thinking the whole time I was driving the car, although I was enjoying the car very much, I was looking at it going, how would I get that reworked? How could I dismantle it, sleeve it? So Dave has a really good point. And it does interrupt the design harmony of the cabin.
There are also various safety rules around interior items. You know, they have to pass muster for safety tests. One reason why the original BMW Mini had those toggle switches, but they had hoops either side of them. A toggle on its own is not allowed to project from the dashboard in case it sort of spears you through the hand in an accident. I wonder if changing the gear selector, because it's a major control and obviously it sticks out quite prominently in the interior, any change means you have to sort of re-homologate the whole thing and have it safety tested. And again, it's just such an expense.
It's prohibitive.
But if you go, we took this from a BMW, they've already done the hard work. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that may be another reason. Because it's, Morgan, they're not a big company that have loads of money. And Ineos, they'd already spent a fortune just getting that car designed and engineered. So it's just one extra bit of cost. And you go, well, BMW did this, and they did all the durability testing on it and all of that stuff.
And of course, you can buy one off the shelf anytime you want.
Yeah. Because to my mind, it looks, if anything, even worse in the Ineos interior because it's so out of step with all the other controls.
Yeah.
Which are sort of slightly old school and a bit sort of crude looking, deliberately so. And then you've got this very sleek, sophisticated BM Selector. So, Selector. Well, but I don't know. I mean, we perhaps we could ask somebody at Morgan when we go there to do our live show on the 7th of May.
Gosh, that was seamless,
wasn't it?
Wow.
Tickets still on sale.
Didn't even see that coming. That was proper. I was standing on the edge of the platform, and I didn't even know that there was a train that was going to swoop through at high velocity.
Blew your hair backwards, and you went, "Oh, I must remember to buy a ticket for Smith & Supply."
That was amazing.
At the Morgan factory on the 7th of May.
Well, yeah. I'll end that by just saying I still haven't driven a manual Mark V Supra. I believe it's brilliant, and I've got a real hankering for a Mark V Supra because I feel like it would be a satisfying car to own, and then in 20 years' time, an American will buy it off you for £1 million. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, but they can buy Mark V Supras, so they won't get a mad craving for them the way they do with other stuff like that.
Shit. You have a point. Anyway.
I'm not a huge fan of that new Supra, but...
I'm liking it more and more, weirdly. It's a grower, not a shower for me.
That Z4 Hand Shandy that I drove with the manual box in it was really nice.
Was it?
So maybe the Supra was equally pleasant. Can I do a question here from a listener who signs himself off Anthony, a.k.a. Bert, for reasons that aren't clear. But anyway, he says, question from a patron aimed primarily at Richard, because he's a massive nerd. Oh. I was wondering, what car model has had the most manufacturers. I thought it might be the original Mini, brackets Morris, Austin, BL, Rover, but then thought about whether the Fiat 124 would qualify, brackets Fiat Lada FSO, although it did undergo some big changes. Have I missed an obvious winner? This is a good one. Now, Mini, yes, good. I would actually say it depends if you're talking like the name of the manufacturer has changed or it's a different manufacturer, because if it's just the badge on the front, actually the Mini's big brother, the Austin 1100, 1300, would be a contender, because Austin, Morris, Wolseley, Riley, MG, but they were all. Did it do
Innocenti? Did Innocenti make that car as well?
Yes, they did. So, yeah, it's. But I think that it's all the same company, just badge engineering. If you're talking about the actual company is different.
Yeah, like Lada making the Fiat 124.
Yeah, I don't know though, because that sort of feels like they did enough to it. They changed it quite a lot, and FSO the same. I think that the actual answer, or a plausible answer, is the Hillman Avenger.
Oh,
because just on its home turf, it was the Hillman Avenger, and then it was the Chrysler Avenger, and then finally it was the Talbot Avenger.
Yeah.
But it was also the Plymouth Cricket in North America.
Yes. The rarest of the Mopars.
And it was a Dodge in South America, but weirdest of all, it was also a Volkswagen in South America.
There was another one as well, though, wasn't there, in Iran? Was it
well, that was the Hillman Hunter.
Was that the Hunter, not the Pike? Yes, that's right. I get those two mixed up.
I don't think the Avenger was.
It was a. Did Volkswagen make it as well? It was made with the VW badge.
They did. It was in Brazil or Argentina. It was
so odd.
It was a VW, weird badge engineering thing. So it's had, I would say, what's a Chrysler, like, because these were consecutive in Europe, Hillman, Chrysler, Talbot, then Dodge, Plymouth, Volkswagen. Is there one more we're missing? Anyway, I think the Avengers got to be in with a shout there.
Which is ironic, because there's so few of them left in the UK, where they originally came from.
Get yourself to South America, pick up a Plymouth.
It's funny you should say that, Richard. I know a guy with a Dodge Polara that's not a Dodge Polara, it's a Hillman Avenger. And
really?
Yes, I do, yeah. It's in the
this
UK.
Country or in America?
It's in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, it was imported, it was. Yeah.
Crikey.
I know.
Huh.
Fun times.
Good.
For another day.
Fun times. I can't think of anything else that sort of fits that bill has had as many manufacturers.
No, I mean, you got Willis.
You got Willis. The same car.
You got Willis Jeep. They did the Hodgkiss, and they did the. Would it have been AMC back then, or I'm trying to think. And then Land Rover had a couple of different names, but not quite, did they? Because they still called themselves.
Yeah.
The Minerva was a Land Rover, but not quite the same, was it?
No, not quite. I mean, yes, but still, it's still really a Land Rover, just with differences.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's got a thought on this, then hello@smithandsniff.com.
I've got a question from Arne, I think it's Arne or Arne Hulstein. Hi, inspectors of brown undercarriages. I don't know how to react to that intro. I'm looking for advice. I'm considering changing one of my cars. I've got a Saab 9.3 Vigan convertible. Good choice. Which we've worked up to get about 300 horsepower and 400 newton meters from. And we've also added an Abbott racing kit on it for handling. But now my oldest daughter has got her driving license. And I've come to the realisation that this might not be the best car for her to make her first miles in. Plus, we have to get to the point where our second car also needs to be able to transport some bulky, though not heavy goods. A hand-built basketball wheelchair is not heavy, but mainly big. Anyway, the question is, What would be a well-handling and fun car to drive that could seat 4 people, have a decent-sized hatchback to fit a wheelchair into, and teach my daughter the joys of driving? I've had plenty of cars over the years, and I've probably studied the yearbooks and spec sheets of cars about as rigorously as Richard has. But some outside pointers might be nice, as I will otherwise quickly be tempted into very impractical cars like Boxsters or another Lotus. Thanks for the help, supporters of an unhealthy focus on four-wheeled self-propelled vehicles. Arne. Well, I'd say, Arne, you're probably based in Scandinavia somewhere, but I might be wrong.
Based on his name, his Saab, and...
Yes.
Metric...
And the 400 Newton meters, maybe? Yes,
Yeah,
that's what I was I might be completely wrong.
But I like that. I like you're the Poirot of car information, giving clues as to country of origin. So a small car, but big, with a biggish boot to get a wheelchair in.
Seat 4
and
wheelchair-sized hatchback
well.
boot and fun. He didn't actually mention price or power, but I'm guessing if his daughter is starting to drive very soon, you're not going to want to buy a 2-litre turbo or anything, are you?
No.
So
if it's got to seat 4, has it got to seat 4 with the chair in the boot? So you can't have a seats down cheat on this.
Well, I was just thinking the same thing. I bet you're thinking what I'm thinking as well. But
I don't know. For some reason, I just suddenly thought about a VXR Mariva for some reason. I was like, don't suggest that.
Do you know what? They were so fast.
But were they not a little unruly?
They were very unruly. 1.6. They were torque steer warriors. Warriors of the torque steer. I don't know if that'd be good as a first car. It might be.
No.
It might be.
No. No, let's walk away from that. I don't think that's a good idea.
So I think boot-wise, what was the smallest engined fun Clio? Because Clio's...
depends which generation, but I mean, we were just talking off air, weren't we, about how cheap 172s were and probably aren't anymore. But I don't know. Has Clio got a big boot?
Clio has a pretty big boot for the size of the car and pretty good backseat area. Is it the second gen of Clio with the curved glass hatch over the back?
Yes.
So the 182 shape.
Yeah.
That is my favourite Clio. And of course, you don't have to get the hot one. There were those 2-litre 16-valve non-sporty ones, which were quite cool. I say non-sporty. They were sporty, but they weren't, didn't have lots of cup suspension stuff going on.
I'm going to come out slightly out of the left of the field with a couple of suggestions from the same company that are not sporty, but I don't know necessarily that's what Arne's looking for. The Skoda Yeti and the Skoda Roomster.
Oh, the Roomster. I saw a young guy driving one of those the other day. Haven't seen a young person driving one ever.
No.
They're real, they're proper garden centre cars, they are.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe an acquired taste, much so they're very practical cars. But a Yeti, I think the Yeti's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think the Yeti is cool. Dynamically, I don't know how fun it is, but
they're all right, aren't they? Sort of very VW groupish, but they're not horrible to drive, and I think they're sort of likeable.
Yeah.
And I saw a really tidy late model one just a couple of days ago, and I did sort of do a double take and just went, that's a handsome unit of a car, and there's plenty of space in them. So I don't know. Obviously, it's not small, but I think we're maybe sort of there's a smallness beyond which you cannot go if you want 4 seats and room in the back for was it a handmade basketball wheelchair, did you say?
It's a hand-built basketball wheelchair. It's not heavy, but it is quite big.
Specialist bit of kit, so you've got to look after that. And I guess the boot space that it requires is, I don't know how it folds up, but I'm going to say Yeti just because I like them.
Do you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to probably say a Honda Jazz. And people will go, hang on, it's supposed to be fun to drive. Honda Jazz are fun to drive. I will die on that hill. They're actually much more dynamically interesting than you give them credit for. And they've got really good boot space and rear seat configurations. And you can buy the hot one. I forget what size engine it had in it, but it was a little bit of a screamer.
There was an SI, wasn't there?
Yes, there was an SI, and I don't think they're worth any money. So I would, so I might go for, if you could afford to insure it, of course, I might get myself a Jazz, a hottie Jazz.
Okay, a question here from Elliot Parkhouse. He says, I feel as if I'm dangerously close to pulling the trigger on a ruinous money pit. Recently, during my weekly commute, I've been browsing the classifieds for various late 90s/early thousands luxury saloons, E38 7 Series, Mercedes W140 or W220 S-Class.
Oh.
I have a budget of around £10,000 to £12,000. I want something that screams 90s or thousands excess. Big, comfy, doesn't make me look like a disgraced TV presenter. Shout out then.
It's got a very good point.
Yeah.
Got a very good
My
point.
only concern is running costs. I don't want to have to sell organs to keep the thing going. My questions are the following. 1, will vehicles of this nature be a money pit? 2, do you SSGs have any other suggestions I should consider?
My videographer Phil is looking seriously at an S-Class. I think it's a 220. I can't remember all the numbers. It's the one the mid-2000s one.
Yeah.
And they are still regarded as being very reliable. And we spoke to a couple of independent Mercedes specialists about what they're like to live with, specifically the diesel one, the V6 diesel. Which that era of Mercedes diesel was fantastic, because he does a lot of motorway work, Rich, basically. And the general consensus is they're quite easy and cost effective to live with. You just have to buy a good one, and it's often worth paying a specialist to look at the car in question beforehand, because that 150, 200 quid of eyeballing is actually small fry compared to how badly it can go wrong, like I've said before. So I think that is probably the best bet. They're really good, and unless you haven't said about how often you're going to use it, you could go for the V8 petrol if you were trying to be some sort of 90s excess baller. But but Jag is in there, I suppose. Jags are not been mentioned.
Yeah, just make sure we mention a used Jag at some point, because as is the tradition for the Otosot shows. I think, Elliot, will a vehicle of that nature be a money pit? Yes, it could be. You just don't know. But if it's going to need money spending on it, it's probably going to be a lot. I mean, W140s, the Diana shape in inverted commas, as they are called for some macabre reason, they're sort of modern classics now, aren't they? And they were one of the last of the so-called proper Benzes, in that they sort of spent 8-10 years developing it. But that doesn't mean it won't go wrong at its age, and it'll be some module or something that'll cost $2,000 to replace. Yeah, is the fear. That might not happen, but if it does, you've got to be ready for it. I would worry about those E38 7 Series for the same reason. My feeling, based on not personal experience, but certainly the experience of others, is that 90s and 2000s BMWs are not quite as high quality as they feel. And something could go wrong with that car, could really shaft you. Might not. Just don't know, do you? But
no. But the good news is... The 220 S-Class is the follow-up to the 140, which is the one that had those big, blobby headlights that go very milky and make them look sad. Is that the car I'm talking about?
They always flop onto their air suspension if they've been parked too long, and that also makes them look tragic. So I don't know. The 221 was the follow-up, which I think was probably a better-made car. Those 220s from that era when Mercedes just suddenly decided to cut every corner going. That's the era of the E-Class, isn't it? So the one I'm talking about is the one that came after that. Yeah, which has got the sort of sharper headlights.
That's right.
And I think it's a big wheel arches and sort of better quality. Yeah,
that's the one. That's the one. What's that again? What W number is that?
That's the 221.
Yeah, that's the one I'm totally gunning for.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm trying to think. The best bet, isn't it? I mean, it's inevitable, because I think we mentioned them a lot, that we would recommend a Lexus LS as well, because they are sort of famously well engineered.
Yeah,
Probably someone at home now is screaming at us for the fact that they suffer exactly the same issues as the Merc and the BM, and that like a single module will go on the pop, and then suddenly it's like you've got 1,900 quid's worth of bill plus labour.
It's sort of true, but I think to counter that, you're not paying main dealer repair rates, and there's a lot of cars being broken for spares because they reach a value where they're worth more as donors. Yes. And that works. It's the same as my Boxster. It works in your favour because you know there's loads of second-hand genuine parts out there, and you can keep the car on the road for a fraction of what you could have. So I love all that. And when I was in my early 20s, a lot of my mates were driving around in W140s and 7 Series, like 728 BMWs, because they'd reached a point where they were worth nothing, and we weren't so young that we couldn't get insured, and we were just driving. Lots of us were driving around in Luxo barges because they were just damn cheap, and they were great. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, these could all be absolutely fine. It's just that I don't want. I don't want Elliot to come back and go, "You bastards! You told me to buy a 740i and it's exploded within a mile of picking it up," because they could be fine.
Yeah. That's the nature of the game, darling. Sure. It's the nature of the game. Yes.
Outside shot here, slightly silly, but and also just my personal preference. For your budget, Elliot, of up to 12 grand, you might, so that it's getting harder and harder, be able to find a Toyota Century. And oh my goodness, that would be lovely.
Gosh, that is a worthy contender.
Anyway.
Okay, I've got it's a friend of the show, a letter from a chap called Nick Boaz, who is the managing director of The Den, who I visited there. It's the kind of spin-off business from Retro Power. Now, Nick has sent us a fun letter. Hi, Messieurs Smith and Sniff. I wanted to first get in touch and ask an Otosot question. I saw on Facebook Marketplace recently a 1953 Massey Ferguson in classic Massey Ferguson grey for a little over 2,000 quid. It was advertised close to me, it was a runner, and it had a working PTO. Power takeoff. I am tempted to buy it for fun and take the kids to school in it with them in a trailer. Have you ever been tempted or indeed owned a non-car vehicle that's just been unnecessary and actually not that helpful for everyday life? Tractors, planes, motorcycles, or a dreadful tricycle? Or maybe one of those.
That's on my list of pub names. The dreadful tricycle.
Or maybe even one of those amphibious buses that sank in the Thames once, or a tank. I personally love a tank. So anyway, I should sign this email off with an SSG, flute / stroker, CMTMB. Well, you fitted all of them in. Thanks, Nick. The short answer is yes. I've nearly bought / pulled the trigger on an Orchard spec tractor, which I've probably talked about on Smith and Sniff about 5 years ago.
One of those very narrow ones.
Yes, a narrow one. So an Easter Island head of a tractor.
Yeah.
And I like them because they fit into back gardens of houses that don't need tractors in them. And also, of course, many of them are road legal, so you can still go to the pub for lunch if you really, really wanted to. But the main vehicle I was taken by and got to the point where I was actually totting up importation, I'd spoken to somebody about bringing one in and doing the paperwork, was a tuk-tuk. When I did a charity road trip around the base of India once for Teenage Cancer Trust, and we were flooded by highly decorated tuk-tuk taxis. Most of them are two-stroke. A couple of them are diesel, but I wouldn't go near those. They were just horrendous. And I just was so taken.
What do they sound like?
Oh, they sounded awful. But the black and yellow tuk-tuk taxis, they were all hand-painted by either the owners or someone in the family, or maybe there's a sign writer in each village. Had all these amazing colourful murals and sequins and decorated roof canopies and the seat fabric. Everything was just so fun. I came back from that week in India. It was like, right, I'm buying a tuk-tuk and I'm doing the school run in a tuk-tuk, because at the time it was a really short school run. And I said this to my I said this to my ex-wife and said, look, I'm totally bringing one in. And the great thing is when we're not doing school run in it, I think I could hire it out for Indian weddings in the UK. I think it'd be really popular. And to her credit, she said, that's not the worst idea you've ever come up with. And let me start.
Damned with faint praise.
Yeah, so I nearly imported. I was going to import 2, sell one, and keep the other. But the only thing that stopped me, because the exchange rate was good and the paperwork didn't seem too difficult. The only thing that stopped me is work got really busy, and that was that. So it never happened. So Nick, I should have done it. I feel like I've missed the boat on it, and I'm annoyed with myself. And I still love a tractor. I've never owned a tractor, but I very much like one.
Do it.
Yeah, maybe a hearse, but that's a car. So
I have nothing to compete with that. Just to say that I wish you'd bought a tuk-tuk.
Well, maybe I will.
Reenacted scenes from Octopussy in your local town.
Would you? Do you know what? For Smith and Stiff Live, you could have a blunderbuss T-shirt cannon and fire promotional T-shirts into the crowd, but a little bit too close to the crowd.
Yeah, just remember what happened to Maud Flanders. Right, well, that's probably enough for this week. Thank you so much for your questions. Keep them coming. hello@smithandsniff.com. Start your subject line with Otosot. It helps us to find them. We'll do this all again next Friday. But until then, goodbye.
Bye, everybody.